The night was heavy with rain, the kind of rain that soaked through clothes and skin and went deep into the bones. The alien widow walked slowly down the narrow street, her bare feet splashing in the puddles, her thin cloak clinging to her trembling body. Her eyes looked tired, her lips pale, and her heart carried the weight of rejection after rejection. She had knocked on many doors, begged for a place to rest, but every home turned her away. They looked at her with disgust, whispered words of shame, and slammed the doors before her face. She told herself again and again, no home wanted a widow like her, no family wanted a burden, no one wanted a shadow of sorrow in their house. The lamps along the road glowed weakly through the storm, casting broken reflections on the wet ground. Shops were closing, windows shutting tight, and people hurried past without giving her a glance. She pulled her thin cloak tighter, but the fabric was too thin, too old, unable to fight against the cold wind. She shivered hard, her teeth chattering, her hands shaking, and she whispered softly, "All I ever wanted was warmth, just warmth." Her mind went back to the days of her husband, when she had a home, when laughter filled her small world. But war had taken him, cruel and merciless, and with his death, her world had burned. Her people believed widows brought misfortune. They pushed her out, called her cursed, unwanted. Since then, she had wandered from street to street, from world to world, and everywhere she went, the answer was the same: no one wanted her. She stopped at the corner of the street, the rain falling heavier now, dripping from her white hair, soaking into her cloak. Her body was weak, her knees bending as if ready to fall, her eyes staring at the ground, too tired to cry. But then, as thunder rolled across the sky, she felt a gaze on her. She looked up slowly, and through the fogged glass of a small cafe, she saw him. A human sat at the table inside, a warm lamp above his head, steam rising from a cup near his hands. He was not like the others. His eyes did not turn away. He did not close his door or hide his face. He looked at her, straight into her, his expression unreadable, neither pity nor disgust, only something still and deep. For a moment she froze, her breath caught in her chest, afraid that he too would look away soon. But he did not. The cafe was alive with warmth, its windows glowing golden, the sound of voices and clinking cups carried into the night. She stood outside, drenched and trembling, a figure of sorrow against the bright scene within. The human leaned forward, his hand resting on the glass, as if debating with himself. She wanted to run, to turn away before he rejected her too, but her legs would not move. The world outside was too cold, too empty, and something inside whispered, "Stay, just stay." A group of men passed behind her, laughing loud, throwing glances her way. She lowered her head quickly, shame burning through her already broken heart. They muttered cruel words, words she had heard 1,000 times before, words that cut like knives. But when they were gone, she lifted her eyes again, and the human was still watching her. The storm grew louder, the sky cracking with lightning, the street nearly empty now. Her stomach growled, hunger twisting her insides. Her hands clutched her cloak tighter. She leaned against the wall, ready to let the night swallow her, ready to disappear into darkness. And then the door of the cafe opened. He stepped out, the human, tall and wrapped in a dark coat, the rain dripping from his hat. His boots splashed in the puddles as he walked toward her, his face calm, his steps slow. She stared at him in disbelief, her lips parting but no words escaping. Humans avoided her kind. Humans ignored alien widows. Humans never crossed the line for her. Yet here he was, walking into the storm, walking toward her. He stopped only a step away, his eyes meeting hers again. For a long breath, the world was silent except for the rain. Then he did something no one had done in years. He removed his coat and held it out to her. She blinked, her hands trembling, afraid to take it, afraid it was a trick. But his voice, steady and low, broke through the storm. "You look cold," he said. "Take it." Her throat tightened, tears mixing with the rain on her face. She reached out slowly, her fingers brushing the heavy fabric, warmth still clinging to it. And for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she felt a spark of hope. The question thundered in her heart. Was this the human who would finally give her the warmth she had begged for? The coat was heavy in her hands, the fabric still warm from his body. She clutched it close to her chest, her breath uneven, her heart racing faster than it had in years. No human had ever stepped toward her with kindness. No human had ever looked into her eyes without judgment. Yet this man stood before her, rain pouring down, his face calm, his gesture steady. He was not afraid of the whispers of others. He was not blind to her sorrow. She hesitated, her body trembling, her voice trapped in her throat. Was this real, or was it another cruel joke of fate? She had been mocked before, offered false kindness only to be pushed back into the mud. Her fingers dug into the coat, as if testing whether it was truly hers to hold. But the man did not pull it away. He only nodded once, his eyes never leaving hers. "Wear it," he said softly, his voice carrying over the storm. "It will keep you warm." His tone was not commanding, not pitying, only simple, honest. She lowered her gaze, then slowly wrapped the coat around her shoulders. The weight of it pressed on her like an anchor, but it was a good weight, a safe weight. For the first time in countless nights, she did not feel the cold biting through her skin. He stepped back a little, studying her, not with hunger or cruelty, but with something else, something she could not name. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the words would not come, her voice broken from too many nights of silence. Instead, she simply nodded, her pale lips trembling, her wet hair clinging to her cheeks. The human tilted his head, as if reading her silence, then turned slightly toward the cafe. "Come," he said. "There is food inside. You need it." Her heart jolted, her body stiff. Food, warmth, a place to sit. She had not dared to dream of such things. But fear wrapped around her chest, choking her. What if this was a trick? What if others waited inside to laugh at her, to throw her out? Her steps froze against the wet stones of the street. He noticed her hesitation, his brow furrowing, but his voice remained steady. "No one will harm you while you are with me." The words struck deep, sharp and warm at once. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to let them sink into her broken heart. And yet, her whole body shook with doubt. She had trusted before, and trust had shattered her again and again. A flash of lightning split the sky, followed by a crack of thunder that made her flinch. The man waited, patient, not moving closer, not rushing her. He only stood there, in the rain, offering his presence as shelter. The cafe lights glowed brighter behind him, golden against the storm. She took one step forward, her legs trembling, her chest tight. Then another step. The ground seemed to stretch forever between her and that door, but she moved, drawn not by hope alone, but by the strange strength in his eyes. When they reached the door, the warmth of the cafe spilled into the night. The smell of bread, roasted meat, and hot drinks filled her senses. Her stomach twisted painfully, hunger roaring inside her like a beast. The man opened the door wider, standing aside, his gesture inviting. Her hands gripped the coat tighter, her breath shaky. With one last look at him, she stepped inside. Voices quieted, the room shifting as people noticed her. The widow with white hair, the outcast, the cursed one. She felt their stares piercing her, whispers crawling across the walls. Her heart screamed to run, to flee before they pushed her out again. But the man entered after her, his presence a shield. His eyes swept the room once, sharp and unflinching. And the whispers died, the stares softened or turned away. He guided her to a corner table, far from the crowd. She sat slowly, her hands trembling on the wooden surface, her cloak dripping water. Her eyes darted around, ready for cruelty, ready for rejection. But none came. The man called the server, ordered food, his voice calm, steady, as if this was normal. As if bringing an alien widow into a human cafe was nothing unusual. She watched him closely, still unsure, still afraid. Why was he doing this? What did he want? No one gave without wanting something in return. No one reached out without a hidden blade. Her lips parted, her voice weak, cracked from silence. "Why?" she whispered, the single word trembling between them. He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes steady. Then he answered with a simple truth. "Because you needed help." Her chest ached, her throat tightened. It was too simple, too pure, a reason she had not heard in years. Tears filled her eyes, falling silently onto the table. She pulled the coat tighter, her heart both afraid and desperate. Was this the warmth she had been searching for? Or would it vanish with the morning light? The warmth of the cafe wrapped around her like a dream, the firelight flickering in the corner, the soft hum of voices around her, yet her body refused to relax. Her hands clutched the coat tighter, her shoulders stiff, her eyes darting from one face to another, always expecting the sneer, the whispered curse, the cruel laughter. But none came, only curious glances that soon turned away under the steady presence of the human who sat across from her. The server placed food before her, steam rising from the bowl, the smell of broth rich with herbs and bread fresh from the oven. Her stomach twisted in pain, hunger clawing at her insides. She wanted to eat. She needed to eat, but her fingers trembled. She stared at the food as if it were forbidden, her mind whispering that it could be taken away at any moment, that this was too much for someone unwanted. The man leaned forward, his voice calm. Eat. It is for you. Still she hesitated, the past pressing down on her. Memories rose, sharp and heavy, pulling her back into the fire of her old life. She saw her husband again, tall and proud, his laughter strong, his hand always steady in hers. She saw their home, simple but filled with light, their small garden where he planted flowers that glowed under twin moons. For a moment, her lips curved into the shadow of a smile, but then the memory shifted. Flames, soldiers, screams, the war tearing through her world. She saw him fall, his blood staining her hands, his eyes fading as he whispered her name. Her chest tightened, her breath ragged. After his death, the people turned on her, calling her cursed, saying her presence brought the flames. They pushed her away, cast stones at her door, drove her from the village. Her family turned cold, her neighbors turned cruel, and the widow was left to wander. Her hands shook so badly the spoon rattled against the bowl. The man noticed, his eyes narrowing with quiet concern. You have not eaten in days, have you? He asked gently. She lowered her gaze, unable to answer, shame pressing down harder than hunger. He said nothing more, only waited, steady and patient. At last she lifted the spoon, her lips tasting the broth, warmth spreading across her tongue. Her body trembled, and before she knew it, tears were sliding down her cheeks as she ate. Every bite was a memory of what she had lost. Every swallow a reminder of the home that would never open its door again. The man did not interrupt her. He let her eat in silence, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, she pushed the bowl back slowly, her hands resting on the table, her eyes shining with wetness. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why are you kind to me? Why, when others would not even look?" For a long time he did not speak, the storm outside filling the silence with its steady roar. At last he said, "Because no one deserves to be left in the cold." His words were simple, yet they struck like a blade through her chest, sharp and clear. Her heart ached, desperate to believe him, but the chains of the past held tight. She whispered again, "But I am cursed, my people said so." Every home I touched turned dark. Her eyes burned with fear, her voice a trembling confession. "If I stay, I will bring ruin to you too." He leaned forward, his hands resting on the table, his face calm, unshaken. "Curses are words, not truth," he said. "Your people abandoned you because they were afraid, not because you were unworthy." Her lips parted, her breath uneven, the words strange in her ears. No one had spoken to her this way. No one had ever challenged the weight of her exile. Her body leaned back, her mind swirling. The cafe around her seemed to fade, the firelight blurring as the storm outside grew louder. Could she believe him? Could she trust that this human meant what he said? Or was he like the others, ready to turn cold once she stayed too long? Her chest rose and fell fast, panic pressing in, the walls feeling too close. She stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor, heads turning in the cafe. Her eyes darted to the door, to the storm outside, escape calling her name. She whispered, "I should go," her voice shaking, her hands trembling. The man rose too, calm but firm. "If you walk back into that storm, you may not survive the night." His words froze her, cutting through her panic. The widow stood caught between two worlds, the cold emptiness outside and the fragile warmth inside. Her past screamed to run, her heart begged to stay. The storm thundered, the lamps flickered, and in the silence between lightning and thunder, she made no move. The man's voice came again, steady, low, almost a vow. You do not have to be alone anymore. Her breath caught, her eyes burning with unshed tears. No one had said those words to her before. No one had dared to offer her a place to belong. Her heart trembled, her soul torn, and as the rain lashed harder against the windows, she whispered. Only one word, soft as a prayer. Why? The cafe grew quieter as the night stretched long, the storm outside showing no sign of ending. The alien widow sat trembling, the coat still wrapped tightly around her thin frame, her eyes fixed on the table as if afraid to lift them. Her question, soft and broken, still hung in the air. Why? Why was this man helping her? He had no reason, no promise of reward, no ties to her sorrow, and yet his voice had carried words no one else had dared to give her. The human, Elias, studied her carefully, his eyes steady, his presence calm. He did not press her for answers, did not demand trust. Instead, he signaled to the server once more, paid for the meal, and rose slowly. Come, he said gently, his hand motioning toward the door. The night is cruel, and you should not face it alone. Her heart pounded, suspicion gnawed at her. Her people had taught her that kindness was always a mask for hidden knives. But his tone carried no weight of deceit. His movements showed no hint of trickery. Still, fear clung to her like a second skin. Every step with him felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff. Her body wanted to flee, yet her soul ached for warmth, for safety, for a place where she was not a ghost. The storm swallowed them the moment they stepped outside. The coat shielded her shoulders, but the rain still beat against her skin. Elias walked ahead, his boots splashing in puddles, his shoulders broad, steady, a figure of strength against the storm. She followed closely, afraid of being left behind, afraid that if she hesitated, he would vanish like a mirage. The streets were nearly empty now, only shadows moving behind shuttered windows, only whispers carried by the wind. At last, they reached a narrow building, simple and worn, its signs swinging in the rain. Elias opened the door, the hinges creaking softly, and led her inside. It was a small rented room above the workshop he worked in, not grand, not shining, but warm and dry. The air smelled faintly of wood and ink, and the glow of a single lantern painted the walls in soft gold. She froze at the threshold, fear gripping her again. Every time someone had offered her shelter, it had ended in betrayal. Her eyes darted to the bed in the corner, neatly made, its blanket folded clean. Her heart hammered, her hands tightening on the coat, her breath uneven. Would he cast her into chains? Would he demand her body? Would this kindness be the first step into another prison? Elias seemed to sense her fear. He stopped and turned, his gaze meeting hers. You can rest here tonight, he said simply. The bed is yours. I will take the chair. The words stunned her. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She glanced at the bed again, its softness almost glowing in her eyes, the memory of cold streets clawing at her. Her body swayed with exhaustion, her knees weak, yet still she hesitated. Elias walked to the chair, placed his coat over the back, and sat down without another word. He leaned back, folded his arms, and closed his eyes as if declaring the conversation over, as if daring her to believe him. The silence of the room pressed against her ears, broken only by the storm outside. Slowly, carefully, she stepped further inside, her bare feet pressing against the old floorboards. Her hand touched the edge of the blanket, rough but clean, and she flinched as though touching fire. Her body ached for rest, but her mind screamed to stay alert. She turned her head toward Elias, watching him, but he did not move. He did not even open his eyes. His breathing slowed, calm, steady, as though he had no fear of her, no expectation, no hidden intention. Tears welled in her eyes as she lowered herself onto the bed, the blanket wrapping around her like an embrace she had long forgotten. The softness cradled her shaking body, the warmth seeping deep into her bones. She pressed her face into the fabric, muffling the sob that escaped her throat. No home had wanted her, no bed had welcomed her, but here, tonight, she rested in kindness. Her tears fell until sleep pulled her under, heavy and slow, her breathing evening out, her body surrendering at last to the exhaustion of countless nights on the street. Elias opened his eyes once, only once, watching her as she drifted into sleep. His face remained calm, but his gaze softened, as though he too carried scars, as though her presence was not only her salvation, but his as well. He turned his head toward the window, the storm raging outside, and whispered words too soft for her to hear. No one deserves to be left alone in the dark. The night deepened, the rain poured on, and in that small room, for the first time in years, the widow slept without fear. Yet in the shadows of the city, whispers had already begun to stir, voices that would not stay silent for long. And though the warmth of this night wrapped her like a fragile dream, danger was closer than she knew. The morning light crept softly through the cracked shutters, painting thin golden lines across the small room. The alien widow stirred, her body still wrapped in the blanket, her face pressed against its warmth. For a moment she forgot who she was, where she was, only knowing that she was not lying on cold stone, not shivering in the rain. But then memory struck, sharp and real, her eyes snapping open, her heart pounding. She turned her head quickly, afraid that Elias would be gone, afraid that the room would be empty. But he was there, sitting in the same chair where he had promised, his head bowed slightly, his hands resting on his knees. He looked as though he had not moved through the night, his eyes half closed but awake, his presence steady. She blinked, confused, whispering softly, "You stayed." Elias lifted his gaze, meeting hers without hesitation. "I told you the bed was yours." Her chest tightened, her throat dry, her mind struggling to understand. In her world, kindness always carried a price, and yet he had asked for nothing, not even thanks. Still, suspicion gnawed at her. She sat up slowly, clutching the blanket to her chest, her white hair falling loose across her face, her eyes sharp with doubt. "Why?" she asked again, her voice trembling. "Why do you help me?" Elias leaned back, his expression calm, his voice even. "Because I know what it means to be left behind." He turned his hand, palm up, and she saw the scars etched deep across his skin, old wounds from battles she did not know. Her breath caught, her eyes drawn to the marks. For the first time, she realized he too carried burdens. He too had walked through storms of his own. Still, the chains of fear held her. "What if they come for me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "What if your people turn against you for keeping me?" Her people had abandoned her. The humans in the district whispered about her. Everyone always turned away. Why would he be any different? Elias rose from the chair, stretching his back, his shadow long in the morning light. "If they come, they come," he said firmly. "But I will not throw you into the street." The words struck like fire in her chest, too powerful, too impossible. Her lips trembled, her hands clutching the blanket, tears burning behind her eyes. She wanted to believe, but belief was dangerous. Belief broke her heart again and again. The day moved on, but whispers outside the walls began to grow. Neighbors had noticed Elias bringing the widow into his home. Rumors carried like smoke through the alleys. Some said he was cursed for taking her in. Some warned he would bring ruin to the block. Others laughed cruelly, saying he kept her for his own secret reasons. The sound of voices reached her even when she stayed inside, each word a dagger twisting deeper into her fears. By evening, Elias returned with bread and water, his boots wet from the streets, his expression calm, but his silence heavy. She saw it in his eyes, the weight of the stairs, the bite of judgment. He placed the food on the table and sat, his hands folded, his jaw tight. "They are talking," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They want me gone, don't they?" Elias met her eyes, steady as stone. "Let them talk." Her breath caught, her heart pounding. Did he not understand? Whispers turned to stones, stones turned to flames. She had lived through it before. Her voice shook as she pleaded. "They will hurt you. They will destroy you. You must send me away." Her hands trembled as she tried to stand, but her knees weakened, her body betraying her. Elias reached forward, his hand steady, his voice firm. "I said you will not walk back into the storm, not while I draw breath." Silence fell heavy between them, broken only by the rain that had begun again outside. The widow's body shook, her tears falling freely now. No one had ever chosen her over safety. No one had ever said they would stand against the world for her. Her heart ached, torn between fear and longing. She whispered, almost broken, "But why risk everything for me?" Elias leaned closer, his eyes unwavering. "Because warmth means nothing if we only keep it for ourselves." The words wrapped around her, heavy and sharp, filling the cracks in her soul. Her breath shuddered, her body collapsing into the chair, her hands covering her face. For the first time in years, she let herself cry without silence, cry without shame, cry in front of someone who did not look away. Outside, the whispers grew louder, shadows gathering. But inside the room, trust began to take its fragile root. The storm of the world was coming for them. But for one night, in that small room, she was not alone. And though danger circled closer, her heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, this human truly meant his promise. The days that followed were uneasy. The alien widow remained inside most of the time, her hands busy with small tasks, folding the blanket, sweeping the floor, anything to keep her mind from drowning in fear. But every sound from the street made her flinch. Every murmur through the window felt like knives. The whispers had grown into warnings, and the warnings into threats. Neighbors spoke loudly now, their words meant to reach Elias's ears. "She will bring ruin here," they said. "No human should keep a widow alien under his roof." Others sneered. "She carries curses in her skin. Throw her back into the rain before she brings death to us all." The voices crawled into her heart, feeding the fear she had tried to bury. Elias ignored them, his shoulders squared, his step steady, but she saw the weight pressing on him. Every day he came back from work with silent eyes, his jaw tight, his hands scarred from labor and from the tension of standing alone against the crowd. She longed to ask him if it was worth it, if keeping her was worth the stones of hatred hurled at him. But when she tried, the words stuck in her throat. One evening, as rain fell lightly against the window, Elias returned later than usual, his coat damp, his eyes sharp. She rose quickly, fear striking through her. "They spoke to you again, didn't they?" she whispered. He nodded once, his voice low. "They want you gone. They say if I do not send you away, they will come." Her chest tightened, her breath shallow. "Then you must let me leave," she said quickly. "I cannot be the reason you lose your home." Elias placed the bread on the table, his gaze firm. "You are not leaving," he said, his voice iron. "They will not decide for me who belongs under my roof." Her lips trembled, tears filling her eyes. "You don't understand. Once they begin, they will not stop. I have seen it before. They will burn, they will destroy, they will." Her voice broke, her body shaking as memories flooded, flames devouring her village, stones thrown, her people screaming that she was cursed. Elias stepped closer, his hand gentle but strong on her shoulder. "Then let them come," he said. "I will not cast you out to satisfy their fear." Her breath caught, her heart beating wild, but before she could answer, a sound broke through the air. A crash outside, sharp and sudden. She flinched, clutching the blanket around her shoulders, her eyes wide with terror. The sound came again, a stone striking the wall, then another. Voices shouted from the street, harsh and angry. "Send her out," they cried. "Send the cursed widow out before she brings ruin." Her knees weakened, her breath fast, her body shaking as if the past had risen from its grave. She turned to Elias, her voice trembling. "Do you hear them? They will not stop. They will hurt you. They will." But Elias had already moved, stepping toward the door, his back straight, his shadow tall in the flickering light. "Stay here," he said, his voice low but commanding. She reached for him, panic gripping her. "Don't go out there. They will turn on you." But he only glanced back once, his eyes steady, and opened the door. The street was alive with figures, shadows in the torchlight, faces twisted with anger. Men and women stood with stones in their hands, some with sticks, their voices rising like thunder. Elias stepped forward into the light, the rain dripping from his shoulders. His voice carried clear and strong. "This is my home, and she is under my roof. None of you will touch her." The crowd stirred, some murmuring, others shouting louder. "She will curse us all," one man roared. "If you keep her, we will suffer. If you hide her, you bring death to us all." Elias's jaw tightened, his eyes cold as steel. "She is flesh and blood, not a curse," he said. It is your fear that poisons this street, not her presence. Inside, the widow pressed her hands against her ears, her body rocking with fear. She could not bear it. She had seen how crowds turned, how fear became fire. Her eyes filled with tears, her heart begging him to come back inside. She whispered to herself again and again, "Please don't fight them. Please don't suffer for me." But outside, Elias did not step back, his presence unshaken, his voice cutting through the storm of anger. "You want to hate someone," he said. "Hate me, but she stays." The widow's chest ached, her soul torn between running to the door and hiding in the shadows. Every instinct told her she was the cause, that her presence would bring him nothing but ruin. But another voice whispered, softer, trembling, maybe for the first time. What if he truly meant it? What if he truly saw her not as a curse, but as someone worth standing for? The crowd shifted, anger still burning, but hesitation creeping in. They had expected Elias to bow, to send her into the rain, not to face them with fire in his voice. Some lowered their stones, uncertain, others grumbled. But the storm of rage did not break that night. It only waited, circling, hungry, ready to strike again. The widow sat in the corner of the small room, her hands shaking, her eyes fixed on the door. When Elias returned, his face was calm, but his shoulders heavy. He shut the door gently and said nothing, only met her eyes and gave a small nod. Her tears fell fast, her chest breaking, and she whispered through trembling lips, "They will never stop, and yet you still choose me." Elias sat in the chair, his voice steady as ever. "Yes," he said simply, "because you deserve more than the cold." The storm inside the city did not end. Days passed, and though the crowd did not always gather at Elias's door, their whispers grew sharper, their threats heavier. The alien widow felt it in every breath, every shadow that passed the window, the weight of hatred pressing closer. Yet every night she still found herself beneath the blanket of Elias's small room, and every morning she still woke to see him sitting watch, his eyes steady. She could not understand it. No one had ever chosen her. No one had ever stood against the tide for her, and yet this human did so without hesitation. Her heart trembled with both gratitude and fear, the past screaming she was a curse, the present whispering she had found something she had long begged for: warmth. One evening the danger came again, fiercer than before. The sound of boots echoed in the street, louder this time, more voices joining. Torches lit the darkness, fire glowing against the rain, the shadows of men and women pressing against Elias's door. The widow froze in terror, her body shaking, her breath sharp and shallow. "They have come," she whispered. "They will not stop this time." Elias rose from his chair, his jaw set, his coat thrown over his shoulders. His voice calm but firm. "Stay inside," he said. "No matter what you hear, do not come out." Her hand shot out, grabbing his sleeve, her eyes wide with panic. "They will hurt you. They will kill you for me." His gaze softened for a moment, but his voice did not waver. "Then I will face them, but I will not let them take you." The door rattled as fists pounded, angry voices rising like thunder. "Send her out," they shouted. "Send the cursed widow into the street." The widow pressed her hands to her ears, tears spilling down her cheeks. She had lived this before. She had seen fire consume her life, and she could not bear to watch it happen again. Elias stepped outside, his figure framed in the glow of torches. The crowd roared, their faces hard, their voices cruel. One man stepped forward, shouting, "You risk us all for her. She will bring ruin to our homes, our children." Elias's eyes burned, his voice cutting through the storm. "She is not ruin," he said. "She is someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone left with nothing, and you would cast her into the rain because it is easier than showing mercy." The crowd muttered, anger mixed with unease. Another woman sneered, "She is cursed, her people cast her out. Why should we take what even her own did not want?" Elias's voice rose louder, each word like fire. "Her people abandoned her because fear blinded them. Will you do the same? Will you let fear make you monsters?" The widow clutched the edge of the blanket inside, her tears falling faster. Her body shook as she whispered to herself, "He cannot win against them. They are too many." But then she heard his voice again, steady, strong, carrying like a shield. She came here with nothing but sorrow, and all she asked for was warmth. I gave her that, and I will not take it back. The crowd faltered, the weight of his words pressing on them. Some lowered their torches, shame flickering in their eyes. Others turned away, unwilling to fight him. But not all. A few shouted still, anger clinging like claws. Yet none dared strike him, none dared push further. For Elias stood like a wall, unshaken, unbroken. At last, the crowd began to thin, mutters fading into the night, torches dying into smoke. The storm of voices fell quiet, leaving only the sound of rain on the stones. Elias stood alone in the street, his chest rising slow, his shoulders heavy. Then he turned, closing the door behind him. The widow ran to him, her face wet with tears, her voice breaking. Why? Why do you keep doing this? Why risk everything for me? He looked at her, tired but unwavering. Because you are not a curse, he said softly. You are someone who deserves warmth, and I will not let the world take that from you again. Her body collapsed into sobs, her hands clutching his coat, her face buried against him. For the first time, she did not feel like a shadow. For the first time, she felt wanted. No home wanted me, she whispered through her tears. But you gave me warmth. His arms wrapped around her, steady and sure, his voice low. And you will never be without it again. The storm outside faded slowly, but inside that small room, a new light began to glow. The widow, once cast out by all, had found a place, not in stone walls or empty houses, but in the heart of a human who chose her. And though the world might whisper still, though shadows might gather again, she knew one truth would never change. She was not alone anymore. She had warmth forever,